The alien princess, isolation. The grand palace stood tall on the edge of the galaxy, with its silver walls shining brightly under the twin moons. Inside the palace, in a dark corner, sat a young princess, her eyes closed, her face calm but full of sadness. She was blind. Her world was dark, but she had learned to navigate through it by feeling the vibrations of the floor and listening to the soft whispers of the wind that passed through the palace. Her name was Elara, the daughter of the powerful King Varric and Queen Lysandra of the Zironian people. The Zironians were known across the galaxy for their strength, their beauty, and their ability to control the elements. But Elara was different. She was born without sight, and her body, though beautiful, had suffered from a disease that made her movements slower and weaker than others. Despite her royal blood, Elara was not treated like the other princes and princesses. While they trained in the palace gardens, learning to fight, to command the wind, and to wield the power of the stars, Elara sat alone in her room, where no one came to visit her. The servants spoke quietly when they passed by, careful not to make any noise that would disturb her. Her parents, though kind to her, often looked at her with pity in their eyes. They were disappointed, and everyone knew it. Elara's father, King Varric, was a strong ruler, known for his fierce leadership. He had dreams of expanding his kingdom, of conquering other planets, and making the Zironians the most powerful race in the galaxy. He often looked at his daughter, his eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and regret. His only wish was to see her strong, to see her become the future ruler of their world. But that was not meant to be. Elara could feel the tension in the air. She could hear the whispers in the halls of the palace, the soft voices of her people who spoke of her with kindness, but also with a sense of doubt. How can she lead us if she cannot even see? They would ask. How can she stand by the king's side if she is so weak? These words hurt Elara, but she could not stop them. She knew her place in their world was not certain. She was an outcast, a princess without the strength to lead. One day, while sitting alone in the royal gardens, Elara heard footsteps approaching. She tilted her head slightly, listening intently. The footsteps were slow, deliberate, almost hesitant. The soft rustle of the leaves in the wind filled the silence before a voice spoke. "Princess Elara," the voice said gently. It was a servant, a young girl named Lyra. "Your father asks for your presence. The council is meeting." Elara felt a wave of dread wash over her. The council. It was where the powerful leaders of the kingdom gathered to discuss matters of great importance. Her father often attended these meetings, and her mother, though loving, would only join when absolutely necessary. Elara had never been asked to attend. She had always been kept away, hidden from the discussions of her world's future. Her disability made her invisible. "I will not go," Elara said softly, her voice carrying an edge of quiet defiance. Lyra hesitated, but then gently placed a hand on Elaros's shoulder. "It is not for me to say, but perhaps your father needs you. He may not show it, but I think he still believes in you." Elara smiled sadly, the words offering little comfort. She knew that deep down, her father believed in her potential, but he also feared her weaknesses. In his eyes, she would never be the ruler they needed. Elara stood up, her legs weak but steady as she used her cane to navigate through the lush gardens. Lyra guided her gently, but Elara's mind was elsewhere. She thought of the palace, of her father's disappointment, and of the alien world she could never truly connect with. When they reached the grand hall, Elara paused at the entrance. She could hear the voices of the council members echoing inside, discussing strategies wars, and future plans. She knew that these discussions were beyond her reach, beyond her understanding, and yet something deep within her stirred. Despite her blindness, despite her weaknesses, she had always felt a strange connection to the world around her. She could hear the whispers of the universe, the quiet hum of the stars, as if they were trying to communicate with her, but it was a language only she could hear. She stepped forward into the room, her cane tapping softly against the cold marble floor. The room fell silent as the council members turned to look at her, their eyes filled with surprise and confusion. Elara could feel their gazes, but she did not flinch. She had become accustomed to their judgment. Her father, King Var, was seated at the head of the table. He looked at her, his expression unreadable. For a moment, their eyes met, and Elara felt a sudden surge of emotion. Her father's gaze softened, but only for a brief moment before he turned away. "Elara," he said, his voice cold, "you should not be here." Elara stood her ground, refusing to retreat. "I have come to listen." For a moment, there was silence. Then King Varrock spoke again, this time with a hint of sadness in his voice. "You do not belong here. You are not like the others. You are ... different." Elara closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "Maybe I am different, but that does not mean I cannot understand what you are saying. I may not see with my eyes, but I see with my heart." Her words hung in the air, and for the first time she felt a small spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to her than what everyone saw. But would her family, her kingdom, ever accept that? The room remained silent, and Elara knew her journey was just beginning. The first encounter, the days following the council meeting, were filled with whispers and stares. Elara could feel the coldness in the palace air, the weight of her family's expectations pressing down on her like a heavy cloak. Her father's words echoed in her mind. "You do not belong here." She had always known this truth, but hearing it aloud, from the one person who should have believed in her, stung deeply. The next morning, Elara sat alone in her room, as she often did. Her fingers traced the patterns of her gown, the silky fabric, smooth beneath her fingertips. She longed for something more, something beyond the isolation and quiet disappointment. The silence in the palace was suffocating, but it was all she had. Then she heard something different. The soft tap of footsteps, not the usual hurried steps of servants, but a slow, deliberate rhythm. Someone new. Elara's heart skipped a beat. Her mind raced. Was it a servant, or perhaps someone important from the palace? A visitor? She listened carefully, allowing her senses to guide her. "Princess Elara," a voice called out gently, full of curiosity yet respect. It was a male voice, firm but kind. Elara turned toward it, feeling an odd warmth in the tone. There was something familiar, something comforting in the way the man spoke her name. She stood slowly, her body still weak but determined. "Yes," she replied, her voice steady, though her heart was racing. The man stepped closer, and Elara could sense him stopping just a few feet away. "I've been told much about you, princess, but none of it tells me who you truly are." Elara felt a strange sense of relief wash over her, as if his words were not meant to judge, but to understand. It was rare for anyone to approach her without pity, as if she was something to be pitied. She was used to being dismissed before even being seen. The man cleared his throat, his voice again gentle. "My name is Ruth. I'm an envoy from Earth. I've traveled far to meet the royal family." Elara's heart skipped at the mention of Earth. It was a planet she had heard of only in passing, a place so far away from the Zironian homeworld. She had always dreamed of the stars beyond her palace, imagining what life could be like on different worlds. Could this human be the first person to see her as more than just a princess trapped in her own limitations? Earth, Elara echoed. You are from Earth? Yes, Jareth said, his voice calm and warm. I've heard much about your people, but more than that, I've heard about you, Princess. I wanted to meet the one who sees the universe in ways others cannot. Elara tilted her head, curiosity sparking inside her. What do you mean by that? Jareth stepped closer, his presence a strange mix of comfort and intrigue. I mean, Princess, I've heard of your ability to feel the world around you, to sense what others cannot. I believe that you see more than they give you credit for. Elara's breath caught in her throat. He knows. She felt a sense of awe that someone, especially a stranger, had recognized her gift, something she had kept hidden from everyone. It was not something she spoke of for fear of being seen as weak, but it was a part of her that no one truly understood. It was a power that connected her to the world in a way that no one else could grasp. I sense things, Elara whispered, her voice barely audible. Things that no one else can hear or feel. I hear the energy of the stars. I feel the pull of distant worlds. But no one believes me. No one understands. Jareth stood in silence for a moment. He wasn't quick to dismiss her as everyone else had been. His voice was soft but firm when he spoke again. I believe you, Princess. I think you're more powerful than you realize. Elara felt a surge of emotion she had not expected. The words that had always been unspoken, weak, blind, useless, were suddenly replaced with powerful and unique. It was the first time anyone had ever acknowledged the depth of her abilities, the gifts she had always been too afraid to share. She slowly turned her face towards him. But I am blind. My body is not like others. I am not the leader they want me to be. How can I be powerful when I am so broken? Jareth's response was gentle yet sure. You are not broken, Princess. You are different, yes, but that difference is your strength. The galaxy does not need another ruler who can simply see or fight. It needs someone who can understand the deeper currents of life, someone who can listen to the silent whispers of the universe. That is what makes you powerful. Elara's chest tightened at his words. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever understood her like that. The world had always seen her blindness and her weakness as flaws. But Jareth was offering her a different truth, that those very things could make her stronger than anyone could imagine. For the first time in years, Elara felt a small spark of hope flicker inside her. Could it be true? Could someone like her, someone so different, still have a place in the galaxy? Could she truly make a difference? You believe in me? Elara asked softly, as if afraid to hope too much. Jareth nodded, his voice steady. I do, Princess. More than... You know, Elara felt her heart race as the weight of his words settled over her. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel alone. There was a chance, a small but powerful chance, that she could do more than just exist in the shadows of her palace. There was someone who saw her for who she truly was, someone who believed in her, and maybe, just maybe, that was the beginning of something more. The secret connection, the days that followed were strange for Elara. For the first time in her life, she found herself looking forward to her interactions with Jareth. His words still echoed in her mind, a constant reminder that maybe she wasn't as invisible as she thought, that maybe her blindness wasn't a curse, was a gift. a way to understand the universe in ways others couldn't. Jareth would come to visit her often, always with a quiet smile, and he would sit beside her, sharing stories of Earth, of the people there, and of the adventures he had experienced. Elara would listen intently, letting his voice guide her through the unknown. She had never felt so understood, so connected to someone. It was as if for the first time, someone truly cared about her, not for her royal blood, not for her family's power, but for who she was as a person. One day, while they sat together in the royal garden, Jareth spoke of his home planet with a gleam in his eyes. On Earth, we have something called music. It's hard to explain, but it's a way people express themselves, their emotions. You can feel it in the air, in your bones. It makes you feel alive, like nothing else matters. Elara turned her head slightly, as if trying to capture the meaning of his words. Music? She asked softly, her voice filled with curiosity. I don't understand. I can't hear it, but I can feel the vibrations around me, like a distant echo. Jareth smiled. That's it, princess. You feel it. Maybe not like others do, but you feel it in your own way. You have your own connection to the world, a deeper one, and I believe that's why you're so special. Ilara's heart skipped. His belief in her was unlike anything she had ever known. It was as if Jareth had unlocked a door in her mind, a door she hadn't known existed. She had always believed that her blindness limited her, that it kept her from truly connecting with the world. But Jareth was teaching her that perhaps it was her blindness that allowed her to see in ways others couldn't. You really think I'm special? Elara asked, a hint of vulnerability in her voice. I know you are, Jareth said firmly, his hand brushing lightly against hers. You have a gift, Elara, a gift that no one else in this galaxy possesses. You just need to believe in it. For the first time, Elara began to believe. There was something powerful within her, something she had kept hidden out of fear and doubt. She could feel it, like a current flowing through her body, something that pulsed with the rhythm of the stars. But what was it? How could she tap into this power? The days passed quickly, each one filled with more conversations, more revelations, and a growing sense of wonder. The connection between Elara and Jareth deepened. They shared more than just words. There was an unspoken bond between them, something that neither of them fully understood. It was as if their souls were somehow intertwined, each one bringing out the best in the other. One evening, as the twin moons rose high above the palace, Elara stood at the edge of the garden, her hand resting lightly on a stone pillar. She could feel the cool breeze brushing against her skin, the distant hum of energy that flowed through the air. Her senses were heightened, sharper than they had ever been before. And as she stood there, she felt something shift in the air, a change in the very fabric of the universe. Jareth appeared beside her, his presence comforting yet intense. What is it? He asked, sensing the change in her. Elara closed her eyes, focusing on the energy around her. She could feel it now, like a gentle pull at the center of her chest, a wave of warmth and power that seemed to come from the very stars. Above, I feel it, Elara whispered. I feel something different, something strong. It's like the universe is calling to me. Jareth's breath caught in his throat. What do you mean? Elara's voice was barely above a whisper as she continued. I feel connected to everything. The stars, the planets, the energy that flows through the galaxy. It's like I can understand it all, feel it all. But it's so overwhelming. Jareth reached out, his hand brushing against hers once again. Elara, you have a power. A gift that you may not fully understand yet, but I believe you're just beginning to tap into it. Elara's pulse quickened, her mind racing with the possibilities. Could it be true? Could she really have the power to connect with the universe itself? The idea seemed impossible, but the sensations she was feeling were undeniable. I've always known I was different, Elara said softly, her voice trembling. But I never thought this. This power was something I could control. I was afraid of what it could mean. Jareth turned her toward him gently, his eyes full of understanding. You don't have to be afraid, Elara. You are not alone. I will help you understand it. Together, we can figure this out. For the first time, Elara felt the weight of her fears lift. She had spent so long hiding in the shadows, afraid of her own power. But now, with Jareth by her side, she could see a different future, one where her strength, her uniqueness, was not a curse, but a gift. And as she looked up at the stars, Elara knew that this was just the beginning. The universe was waiting for her to step forward and claim her place in it. The journey ahead would not be easy, but for the first time in her life, Elara was ready to face whatever came her way. The battle for power, the days following Elara's discovery of her unique power, felt like a whirlwind. For the first time, she didn't feel like the helpless, blind princess locked away in her tower. Instead, she felt a surge of energy, as if the very stars had aligned to offer her a chance to finally change her fate. But the palace was not a place for change. It was a place of rules, traditions, and power. And while Elara was discovering her potential, the rest of the kingdom was watching, waiting for her next move, hoping she would fail. Elara could feel the tension in the air. Her father, King Varric, had been even more distant lately, watching her from afar with a mix of concern and frustration. He didn't understand what was happening to her. All he saw was his daughter, once weak and helpless, suddenly becoming something else. One afternoon, as Elara sat in the garden with Ruth, practicing the techniques she had learned to control the flow of energy around her, the sound of heavy footsteps interrupted their moment of quiet. Elara tensed, and hand moved to her side, steadying her. Your father is coming, Jareth whispered. Elara nodded, her heart pounding. She had been waiting for this moment, the moment when her father would see her strength and either embrace it or reject it. There was no in-between. King Varric appeared before them, his figure imposing, his face hard as stone. He did not greet them with warmth, but instead, his gaze locked onto Elara, filled with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. Princess, he said, his voice cold and distant. I have heard rumors of your abilities. What is this nonsense about you controlling the very energy of the stars? Elara stood, feeling her power surge within her. She had come so far, learned so much, and for the first time, she would not hide in the shadows. It's not nonsense, father. I've discovered something within myself, something powerful. I am no longer the weak princess you once knew. King Varric's eyes narrowed. Powerful. You've always been my daughter, Elara. But this, this is dangerous. The kingdom does not need a ruler who is unpredictable, who cannot control herself. Elara's heart clenched, but she held her ground. I can control it, father. I can help the kingdom in ways no one else can. I can sense the balance of the universe. I can guide us to peace, to prosperity, but I can't do it alone. I need your support. The king's expression was unreadable. He took a step closer to her, his gaze piercing. Support? You want my support? The kingdom doesn't need someone like you, someone so different. Jareth stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. King Varric, you don't understand. Elara's abilities are not a weakness. They are the strength your kingdom needs. She can feel the pulse of the galaxy itself. She can sense what others cannot. Why not use her gifts? Varric's eyes shifted to Jareth, and for the first time, Elara saw a flicker of recognition, or perhaps fear, in her father's eyes. You, he muttered, you've filled her head with these foolish ideas. You've made her believe she's something more than what she is. Elara felt the sting of her father's words, but she refused to back down. You're wrong, father, she said, her voice steady and strong. I am more than just a princess. I am someone who can change the fate of this kingdom. I can stop the war that's coming. I can stop the suffering of our people. King Varric stared at her for a long moment, his face hard. Then, in a voice that sent a chill down her spine, he spoke. If you cannot control yourself, if you cannot prove your worth, then you will never lead this kingdom. You are nothing more than a distraction, a dangerous one. Elara's heart sank. Her father's words were a blow to her spirit, but they also ignited something inside her. She had always believed in her power, in her ability to change the course of history. But hearing her father dismiss her so callously made her realize just how far she had to go. She wasn't just fighting for acceptance anymore. She was fighting for survival, for the future of the kingdom. I will prove it to you, Elara said, her voice filled with determination. I will show you that I can lead. I will stop the war, and I will do it with or without your approval. King Varric's gaze softened for a split second, as if he saw something in her that he hadn't noticed before. But then, just as quickly, his eyes hardened again. We will see about that, princess. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Elara standing there, her hands trembling slightly, but her heart filled with a newfound resolve. Jareth placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You'll show him, Elara, he said softly. You'll prove that you're the leader this galaxy needs. Elara nodded, but inside, she knew the battle had only just begun. Her father would not be easy to convince, and the kingdom would not accept her without a fight. But she was no longer the weak princess who hid in the shadows. She was Elara, the alien princess who could feel the stars, and nothing would stop her from claiming her place in the universe. The Betray Elara's resolve grew stronger with each passing day, but the weight of her father's words haunted her. The pressure to prove herself, to earn her place in the kingdom, pressed down on her shoulders. The war that loomed on the horizon, the conflict her father had been preparing for, continued to grow more imminent. Elara knew she had to act before it was too late. Jareth remained by her side, offering guidance and support. Together, they spent countless hours refining her control over her abilities. She had come to understand the energy around her, the pulse of the galaxy, the ebb and flow of cosmic forces, and she could now channel it into something tangible. Her power had blossomed into something incredible, and Elara knew she could use it to stop the war her father was so eager to start. But there was one thing standing in her way: the royal family's resistance to change. Elara's connection with Jareth had deepened in ways she never expected. Their bond, once simply a friendship, had transformed into something more profound. She no longer felt like the lonely princess locked away in her tower. Jareth had become her anchor, the person she could trust in a world full of deceit. But even in his presence, Elara could sense that something was shifting within the palace. Her father's disapproval was more than just words. It had turned into a deep-seated distrust of her power. One evening, as Elara and Jareth walked through the moonlit gardens, Elara felt a subtle shift in the air. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. She was no longer alone. The feeling of being watched had become a constant companion in recent days, and tonight it was more intense than ever. Suddenly, Elara's connection to the energy around her faltered, and she heard a soft whisper in her mind. "A warning, you're being betrayed." The words echoed in her thoughts, and her heart skipped a beat. She turned to Jareth, her eyes wide with fear. "Someone is planning against us," she whispered. Jareth's face darkened, but he said nothing. They continued to walk, his pace quickening, as if he too felt the weight of the tension surrounding them. Elara's senses were on high alert as they approached the palace. She could hear footsteps behind them, too deliberate to be coincidental. When they reached the palace doors, Elara stopped, her breath catching in her throat. The doors swung open, revealing a shadowy figure standing in the hallway. It was one of her father's most trusted advisors, a man who had always spoken highly of Elara in public, though she had never fully trusted him. He was a man who walked the fine line between loyalty to her father and a hunger for power. And tonight, Elara could feel something dark stirring within. "You," Elara said, her voice firm, though a deep sense of unease settled in her stomach. "What are you doing here, Liron?" Liron smiled, though it did not reach his eyes. "I've come to deliver a message, Princess. Your father has ... reconsidered your place in the kingdom." Ilara's heart sank. "What do you mean?" Lyrowyn stepped forward, his voice lowering to a whisper. "It's time for you to step aside. The kingdom cannot survive with someone like you leading it. There are forces at play that even your abilities cannot overcome." Elara took a step back, her mind racing. This wasn't just a warning. It was a betrayal. "Your father sent you?" Jareth asked, his voice cold and sharp. Lorraine's eyes flickered to Jareth, his expression darkening. "Your influence over her is a threat, one that needs to be dealt with." Before Elara could speak, Liron turned and gestured toward the shadows. At that moment, guards appeared from the darkness, surrounding them. Elara's heart raced as she realized the extent of the trap they had walked into. This was no mere conversation, it was an ambush. "Liron, you're making a mistake," Elara said, her voice trembling but firm. "This isn't the way. We can stop the war together. We can save the kingdom." Lorraine's smile twisted into something cruel. "The kingdom doesn't need saving, Princess. What it needs is power. And you, with your weakness and your foolish beliefs, are nothing but an obstacle." Elara's hands clenched at her sides, the energy she had worked so hard to control beginning to surge through her body. She could feel the force of the universe coursing within her, but her fear held her back. She had never used her power against another person, never truly tested its limits. Jareth stepped forward, his voice steady. "You'll regret this, Liron. Elara will not be controlled. Not by you, not by anyone." Lorraine's eyes flickered, with an expression of dark satisfaction. "We'll see about that." Without warning, he gestured to the guards, and they lunged forward. Elara reacted instinctively, pushing the energy inside her outward in a burst of power. The guards were thrown back, crashing into the walls with a force that left them momentarily stunned. But Elara was not in full control yet, and the surge of energy left her weak and dizzy. Lyrian took a step back, his eyes wide with shock. "So, you do have power, but it's not enough." With that, Lirawan turned and fled, disappearing into the shadows with his guards. Elara stood there, breathing heavily, her body trembling from the effort. Jareth rushed to her side, his face filled with concern. "Elara, are you all right?" I'm fine," she said, though her voice wavered. The betrayal stung deeper than any physical wound. Liren had worked against her, alongside her father, and she had no idea just how far the treachery ran. But one thing was clear: there was no turning back now. Her journey had taken a dangerous turn, and she would have to face it head-on. Her kingdom, her family, they were all now her enemies. And Elara knew that the battle for peace would be more difficult than she ever imagined. The revelation Ella stood in the quiet aftermath of the ambush, her heart still pounding from the intense confrontation. The guards who had attacked were now unconscious, strewn across the hallway like fallen leaves. The energy that had erupted from her was still buzzing in the air, a lingering reminder of the immense power she had within her. But as the adrenaline began to fade, the weight of what had just happened settled in. She had been betrayed, not just by Lirawan, but by her own family. Her father, her own flesh and blood, had allowed this treachery to unfold. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. There was no safe place in her kingdom. Not anymore. Jareth remained by her side, his presence a quiet strength as he helped steady her. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, his hand on her arm. Elara nodded, though the unease in her chest had not dissipated. "I'm fine, but I didn't expect this. I didn't think my father would go this far." Jareth's expression hardened, his jaw clenched. Power does strange things to people. It changes them. Your father, your whole family there, blinded by it. Elara's mind raced. She had always known her father to be ambitious, but this betrayal was beyond anything she had ever imagined. How could he, the king who had once held her close as a child, now turn against her in such a way? She took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. "I need to understand what's happening. Why is Liren doing this? Why would my father side with him?" Jareth looked at her with a mixture of concern and something else, perhaps even pity. "There's something you don't know, Elara. Something your father has been hiding from you." Elara turned to face him, her heart racing. "What do you mean?" Jareth hesitated for a moment, clearly struggling with the weight of his words. "Your powers, Elara ... They're not just a gift. They're connected to something much bigger, something your father feared." Elara's mind went blank. "What are you talking about?" Jareth stepped closer, his voice lowering. "The galaxy is on the brink of a cataclysmic war. Your father's actions, the alliances he's made, the plans he's set in motion, they're all connected to this. But the real reason he's pushing for war ... is because of you. Your abilities. You can sense the balance of the universe, Elara. You can see the energy of the stars. That power is connected to the fate of the galaxy itself." Ilara's breath caught in her throat. "You're saying my powers are tied to the future of the universe?" Jareth nodded slowly. "Yes, your gift is not just a means of communication with the stars. It's the key to saving or destroying everything. The balance of the galaxy depends on it. Your father, Lirawan, they know this. They've been preparing for this moment for years, and they're willing to do anything to control it." Elara's mind spun. Everything she had known about her abilities, everything she had believed about herself, was now in question. Her blindness, her weakness, had it all been part of something much bigger than herself? Jareth continued, his voice steady but filled with an urgency Elara had never heard before. "You can change everything, Elara, but you have to make a choice. You can continue to fight your father, to fight the war that he wants. Or you can embrace your power, embrace the universe's energy, and stop the war before it begins. But the choice won't be easy. If you decide to stop it, you'll have to defy your family, your kingdom, everything you've known. Elara stood in silence, her heart heavy with the weight of his words. The future of the galaxy was in her hands. But was she ready to bear that responsibility? The path ahead was uncertain, full of peril and betrayal. And yet, for the first time, Elara felt a flicker of hope in her chest. She wasn't alone. She had Jareth, and together they could face whatever came their way. She could no longer hide in the shadows, afraid of her own strength. It was time to step into the light, to embrace her destiny. "I'll stop the war," Elara said, her voice filled with newfound determination. "I won't let my father's greed destroy everything. I won't let him use my abilities for his own gain." Jareth smiled, his eyes filled with pride. "I knew you'd say that. You're stronger than you think, Elara. The universe chose you for a reason." Elara nodded, feeling the energy within her stir once more. She had a long road ahead, and it would be filled with challenges, but she was ready. The battle for the galaxy's future had just begun, and Elara would fight for peace, for love, for the stars that had always guided her. The choice the days after Elara's revelation were filled with uncertainty. The weight of her new knowledge pressed heavily upon her shoulders. Her powers, once something she had hidden and feared, now felt like both a gift and a curse. The realization that she could change the fate of the entire galaxy was both exhilarating and terrifying. But Elara knew one thing for certain. She could no longer stay silent. She had to make a choice. Her father's betrayal stung, but it also drove her forward. King Varric's desire for power and his willingness to use her for his own gain made her decision clearer than ever. She could not let him continue down this destructive path. She could not let him drag the galaxy into a war that would only lead to more suffering. Elara stood in the royal chambers, looking out over the vast expanse of her kingdom. The palace walls, once a symbol of strength and power, now felt like a prison. The stars above seemed so far away, yet she could feel their presence guiding her, whispering to her. Her connection to the universe had grown stronger since her first encounter with Jareth, and she knew that it was time to embrace it fully. The energy that flowed through her was not something to be afraid of anymore. It was a part of her, and it was her greatest weapon. But even with her newfound resolve, Elara knew that the choice she faced was not easy. She could use her powers to fight against her father and his allies, to stop the war before it began. But that path would come with great sacrifice. To defy her family, to break away from everything she had known, would cost her dearly. She would lose her kingdom, her place in her people's hearts, and perhaps even her family's love. The other path, however, was just as dangerous. To join her father, to use her powers to fuel his ambitions, would lead to the very destruction she sought to prevent. She would become the puppet of a king who had no regard for the lives of others, who would sacrifice anything and anyone for the sake of power. Elara could never live with that. As she stood there, lost in thought, Jareth entered the room. His presence was a comfort, a reminder that she wasn't alone in this. He approached her slowly, his gaze soft and understanding. "Elara, I know this is hard. The choice you have to make isn't easy. But whatever you decide, I'll be with you." Elara turned to face him, her heart heavy. "I don't know if I can do this, Jareth. I'm not like the others. I don't have the strength to lead, to fight for what's right. What if I fail? What if I make the wrong choice? Jareth stepped closer, his eyes filled with empathy. You don't have to be like them, Elara. You don't have to follow in your father's footsteps. You are stronger than anyone realizes. Your power, your heart, that's what makes you a leader. It's not about fighting with force or ruling with fear. It's about doing what's right, even when the world tells you not to. You have the power to change everything. Elara's chest tightened as she listened to him. His words were what she needed to hear, the reassurance that she wasn't alone in her struggle. She had always doubted herself, always believed that her blindness and her disabilities were limitations. But Jareth was right, her differences made her stronger, not weaker. She could feel the power of the universe coursing through her veins, guiding her toward the right path. I've spent so much of my life hiding, Elara said softly, her voice trembling. Afraid of my own power, afraid of what I might become. But now I can see it clearly. I can't let this war happen. I can't let my father destroy everything. Jareth smiled, his hand gently resting on her shoulder. Then it's time, Elara. Time to step into the light. Time to take control of your destiny. Elara nodded, a sense of peace settling over her. The path ahead was still uncertain, filled with danger and conflict. But for the first time in her life, Elara was ready to face it head-on. She would not let her father's thirst for power consume her. She would fight for peace, for the galaxy, and for the future. Taking a deep breath, Elara turned toward the door, her eyes set with determination. Let's go, Jareth. It's time to stop this war. As they walked together toward the throne room, Elara could feel the weight of the galaxy on her shoulders. But she was no longer afraid. She was no longer the blind, helpless princess. She was Elara, the alien princess who could see the stars and she would not let the universe fall into. Darkness,